The same girl waves to police officer Sebastian every day from her window as he patrols by. When he discovers that this is no longer the case, he disregards all norms in order to determine what went wrong. When he finally enters her room, he learns the answers he's been seeking. However, he was immediately doubtful about how much he wanted them. After having the door slammed in his face, Sebastian realizes that something is wrong. He doesn't care anymore whether this loses him his good status with the agency. He decides to take a chance and asks for help searching the home from outside. A few minutes later, he and 10 other cops stormed the residence and handcuffed the guy who had opened the door. When Sebastian sees the girl, he runs up the stairs to the room she's been waving from. What happened to her must be known to him. And as soon as he opens the door, he is shocked by what he finds, so that's why she stopped waving at him earlier that day. But why did the girl disappear? Assuming something was not right, why was Sebastian so certain that he would be proved right? Sebastian has served for almost 20 years as a police officer. He is enthusiastic about his work, is well liked by his colleagues, and has solid relationships in the community. As a result of his deeds, he has been hailed as a hero and now has an impressive list of accomplishments to his name. He had no idea he was going to get another impressive line on his resume. Sebastian has devoted a lot of time to strengthening the force. He's worked risky jobs in the past, but those days are over for the most part. For he's become older and has too many obligations now. To put it bluntly, he lacks the drive he formerly had. The threat may have passed, but it hadn't passed him by. He takes his job as a police officer very seriously. Sebastian is now a happily married man with 2 adoring children. He backed out of perilous missions because he wouldn't have to leave his family without a parent. The reality is that a police officer's life is always in risk, no matter where they happen to be. Now that Sebastian has moved on from being a street officer, he works behind a desk. He is unfazed by administrative tasks. He also liked taking inexperienced riders out for rides so he could show them the ropes. He knew most of the persons who would be encountered on the path that the newbies would follow. Some of them would come to mean a lot to him. Some of the commuters he saw would strike up conversations with him, while others would only nod in his direction to indicate that they had seen him. Many of them were homeowners or shopkeepers who went out of their way to be helpful. They felt safer with the cops present, particularly with helpful Sebastian leading the way. On the corner of one street they passed, there was a larger home. This was one of the rare residences in which Sebastian did not know the occupants. The place seemed to be deserted, since he never saw anybody outside, but there was still one indication that someone was really there. So there was a little girl who stood in the second-story window of this home and waved at Sebastian every time they drove by on the rookie route. I never a change in the girl's appearance. It's always the same window. She always made an appearance when he was in town, and that never changed. Sebastian hoped, deep down, that they would eventually meet. In any case, they did wave at one another often, and he had been wondering who she was. With any luck, she'd be outside when he drove over, and he could meet her and her family. Sebastian was intrigued after one day of driving the same route and waved at the girl. He had had enough of searching in vain. Like any good officer would, he began to look into the situation. He had no idea how much what he was about to discover would alter his life. Sebastian went straight to the local police records first. It was the key to unlocking the mysteries of their town. It might research the property's owners, neighbors, and past. It was to be expected that he would begin here, and he should count himself fortunate to have an office and desk at which to do his job. The home was bought about 50 years ago, as he discovered after looking up the location in the database. The original homeowner passed away 25 years ago, leaving the home to her son. There was no mention of a little girl or her purpose in being there. I mean, what do we do now? Sebastian revisited the database in search of the son's information. He discovered his name and some basic details, but nothing genuinely useful. What he didn't know what to do. Is that a child he saw waving at him through the window? And if not, who was she? Perhaps she had no other housemates at the time. A lack of information left Sebastian with more questions than answers. He double-checked the guy and found the same details. He did a fast Google search and discovered the individual had never had any run-ins with the police, never asked the government for anything, and had no social media accounts. Off the radar, so to speak. However, it didn't account for the female mystery. Sebastian looked everywhere online for any mention of this man's children, but he couldn't locate any evidence that he had a daughter. If she was his daughter, he didn't enroll her in any kind of formal education program. She was either his daughter or there was something else going on. Still on the prowl for clarification, Sebastian continued his investigation. He just couldn't quit up at this point. He was no longer just inquisitive, he was worried. It would be illegal if the girl had not been enrolled in school. A criminal offense may have been committed if she was not listed as his daughter. There were too many alternatives leading to danger. Sebastian was stuck and didn't know what to do. There wasn't even a shred of evidence to support his suspicions that he needed to go questioning at the residence. The guy had technically committed no wrongdoing. Sebastian was unable to provide evidence that she was enrolled, but it was possible that she had just enrolled under another name. However, she continued to wave at him daily. Since there was no concrete evidence, Sebastian had little choice but to continue about his day as usual. As long as she waved to him, he knew she was okay. He continued to ride with the newbies and waved to her as usual. But then an unexpected occurrence occurred that completely caught him off guard. A normal day had passed. This was the beginning of Sebastian's career. Sebastian tried his best to reassure his inexperienced driver, but the novice was understandably anxious about making the trip for the first time. Besides, it was only a dry run and mishaps are quite rare along this path. Sebastian gazed out the window at the regulars he spotted along the way. Many people were out, and he felt generally upbeat as a result. When they got to the corner and Sebastian saw the large home, he knew something had to be done. He went around the home for the window where he thought he could find the girl, but she wasn't there. Nobody else was in sight, as far as he could tell. There's never been a precedent for this. It seemed as though she'd been there forever, once a day, always and without fail. Something was odd about the entire scene and he was going to find it out. Instantly, he saw that there was still a vehicle parked in the driveway. The odds were high that someone was inside. After all, the small girl wouldn't drive off on her own. She was presumably still in the home along with whoever could drive the automobile. In this case, what advice would you provide him? Who's there? How come nothing felt right? If not for this, Sebastian would not normally worry. There wasn't much of a fuss about it. Obviously, a young lady isn't waving at you from her apartment window. She may be in the restroom, sleeping, or perhaps having a stroll. Still, Sebastian's internal compass told him that something was off and he intended to do something about it. So, he instructed the inexperienced officer to wait in the vehicle while he proceeded to investigate the residence. He didn't think it was necessary to explain to the newbie why he was doing it, he just felt compelled to. And he knew he would have to justify his actions afterwards, but he didn't care about the rules and regulations at the moment. In other words, he needed information. Sebastian approached the front door and rang the bell. When I called, no one picked up. After failing to get anybody to answer the doorbell, he pounded on the door. Someone picked up the phone at last, but it wasn't who he was expecting. Everything about this was off, and he was now very suspicious. His fears were justified. Sebastian had managed to track down some photos of the putative homeowner. The guy who let him in didn't resemble him at all. He was dressed formally and shot Sebastian an intense look. Sebastian, despite his ire, insisted on remaining in the room until his questions were answered. If the girl was all right, he would find out. Sebastian had no idea what to do. Without evidence that someone was in imminent danger, he felt he had little chance of obtaining a warrant to search the house. He could only trust his intuition that something was amiss. Additionally, getting a warrant would take too much time. Sebastian was right there, and he had to act swiftly. Nonetheless, it was a risk. Following his convictions and taking action might result in him losing his job. Just considering that made him pause for a second. What do you think? But before he could even get back into his vehicle to go, he made up his mind. He leaned over and grabbed the radio, then quickly sent out a cry for help to his closest allies. Without a formal order, Sebastian felt he had the backing of his other officers. Nothing could stop them from entering the home. Sebastian and the newbie swung off to a side street and parked. As a precaution against raising suspicion or causing a commotion, they planned to meet the other cops there. Sebastian was concerned that he would be setting a negative example for the rookie police and endangering the latter's career. He was taken aback by the young officer's reaction. The newcomer was adamant about wanting to contribute to the scheme. He had faith in Sebastian's judgment, so he offered to stand guard outside the home while Sebastian briefed the other cops. Within 15 minutes, they were all organized and were ready to attack the home. To enter the residence without a warrant was such a flagrant violation of the law that several of Sebastian's buddies were understandably apprehensive to join in. Sebastian swore that someone was in danger and that there was no time to go grab a life preserver. His career and his reputation were on the line, and he knew it. He took a big breath and began guiding the party forward. At the end of the street, out of sight of the home, the cops formed a defensive perimeter. Everyone else was on the same page with the strategy, but Sebastian was worried he was missing something. However, it was too late to go back. They stormed the house at his signal and barged through the front door. The guy in the suit who had opened the door earlier was the first person they saw. The cops handcuffed him and dispersed to various locations. A single other individual was there, a guy dressed impeccably. Nothing has been seen of the girl as of yet. Sebastian, driven by his intuition, entered the house in search of the girl whose window he had seen, only to find her room and the entire house eerily empty and spotless, as if uninhabited for years. Downstairs, he discovered the men he suspected were actually FBI agents surveilling the property. They revealed that the girl and her father had been part of the witness protection program due to threats from dangerous individuals. Their abrupt relocation was prompted by heightened risks, leaving Sebastian bewildered and resigned to the fact that he would never see them again, bound by an agreement of silence with the FBI.